What would you do if your husband handed you a thick envelope, his hand shaking, and told you to leave your own home? How did a few harmless texts and selfies to the pool guy end with me outside, suitcase in hand, and carrying a child that may not even be my husband's? I thought I was in control, until the day the legal documents arrived. My name is Seraphina Quail, and 6 months ago, I had everything. A beautiful suburban home with a sparkling pool, a stable job as a receptionist at Westfield Medical Clinic, a devoted husband named Graham, and our precious 6-year-old daughter, Chloe. Now I'm sitting in a dingy motel room, 3 months pregnant, with nowhere to go and no one to turn to. It all started so innocently. At least that's what I told myself. The morning everything began to unravel, I was standing in our kitchen, watching Graham methodically prepare his breakfast. Same routine every day: 2 eggs over easy, wheat toast, black coffee. He moved with the precise efficiency of the accountant he was, every motion calculated and controlled. "You're going to be late," I said, glancing at the clock. It was already 7:30, and Graham usually left by 7:15. "I know." His voice was flat, distant. He'd been like this for weeks, maybe months. When had my husband become such a stranger? "Graham, we need to talk about—" "Not now, Seraphina." He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door. "I have the Morrison audit today." I watched him leave without even kissing me goodbye. When was the last time he'd really looked at me, really seen me? I was 32 years old, still attractive, still the woman he'd married 8 years ago. But lately, I felt invisible in my own home. Chloe bounced into the kitchen, her dark curls bouncing around her shoulders. "Where's Daddy?" "He had to leave early for work, sweetheart." I forced a smile, pouring her cereal. "Eat up or you'll be late for school." As I drove Chloe to Riverside Elementary, I caught myself checking my appearance in the rearview mirror more than usual. When had those fine lines appeared around my eyes? When had I started looking so ordinary? "Mummy, why was Daddy sad at breakfast?" Chloe's innocent question hit me like a slap. "Daddy wasn't sad, honey. He was just thinking about work." But she was right. Graham had been sad, withdrawn, and instead of trying to understand why, I'd been focusing on how his distance made me feel neglected. At the clinic, I settled into my familiar routine: answering phones, scheduling appointments, filing insurance forms. Dr. Peterson's practice was busy but predictable. I'd been working there for 4 years, and the job had become as routine as Graham's morning eggs. Around 10 o'clock, I heard the familiar rumble of a truck outside. Through the window, I watched Dylan Reyes unload his pool cleaning equipment. He was 28, with sun-bleached hair and the kind of easy smile that made women look twice. He'd been servicing the pools in our neighborhood for about 6 months. "Morning, Mrs. Quail," he called out when he saw me watching. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I felt a flutter in my stomach that I hadn't experienced in years. "It certainly is." That evening, Graham came home at his usual time, 6:30 sharp. He kissed Chloe's forehead and nodded at me before disappearing into his home office. "Daddy, will you help me with my math homework?" Chloe asked through his office door. "In a few minutes, sweetheart. Daddy needs to finish something first." But those few minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. By the time Graham emerged, Chloe had already finished her homework alone and was getting ready for bed. I was loading the dishwasher when he finally appeared in the kitchen. "Long day?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. "They're all long days." He opened the refrigerator and stared inside without taking anything out. "The Morrison account is more complicated than we thought." "Graham, when was the last time we talked? I mean, really talked?" He closed the refrigerator and looked at me with tired eyes. "What do you want to talk about?" Everything I wanted to say: how we'd become strangers living in the same house, how I felt lonely, even when he was sitting right next to me, how I missed the man who used to surprise me with flowers and spontaneous weekend trips. Instead, I said, "Nothing, never mind." He nodded and headed upstairs. I'm going to check on Chloe and then get some work done. I stood alone in our kitchen, surrounded by the life we'd built together, feeling more isolated than ever. That's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Mrs. Quail. This is Dylan from Sunshine Pool Service. Just wanted to let you know I'll be by tomorrow, around 10 a.m. to check your chemical levels. Hope that works for you." I stared at that little smiley face emoji for longer than I should have. When was the last time Graham had sent me a smiley face? When was the last time anyone had seemed genuinely happy to communicate with me? I typed back, "That works perfectly. Thank you for letting me know." Then I deleted the message thread and put my phone away. But I couldn't stop thinking about Dylan's easy smile and the way he'd called it a beautiful day. Later that night, as Graham worked on his laptop beside me in bed, I tried one more time. "The pool guy seems nice," I said casually. Graham didn't look up from his screen. He's very professional, always on time, does good work." "That's good." I waited for him to ask me something, anything about my day, about how I was feeling, about us. But he just kept typing, the blue light from his laptop casting shadows across his face. That's when I made my first mistake. I started to justify what I was thinking. Graham was emotionally unavailable. He was neglecting me, neglecting our marriage. If he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to his wife, could I really be blamed for enjoying a little harmless attention from someone else? The next morning, I took extra care getting ready. I told myself it was just because I wanted to feel good about myself, not because Dylan would be coming by. I chose a fitted sundress that showed off my figure and spent more time on my makeup than I had in months. Graham barely glanced at me as he grabbed his coffee and headed for the door. "You look nice," he said absently, already checking his phone. "Thank you," I replied, but he was already gone. At exactly 10 o'clock, Dylan's truck pulled into our driveway. I watched from the kitchen window as he unloaded his equipment, moving with the confident grace of someone who worked with his hands for a living. So different from Graham's desk-bound existence. "Morning, Mrs. Quail," he called out when he saw me. "Gorgeous day, isn't it?" "Please call me Seraphina," I said, stepping out onto the patio. "And yes, it's beautiful." He flashed that easy smile. "Seraphina, that's a beautiful name. Suits you." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. When was the last time Graham had complimented my name? Had he ever? "Thank you. Can I get you some water? It's supposed to be hot today." "That's very kind of you. Water would be great." As I handed him the glass, our fingers brushed briefly. The contact sent a little thrill through me that I hadn't felt in years. "So, how long have you been in the pool business?" I asked, settling into one of our patio chairs. "About 3 years now," Dylan said, testing the water chemistry. "Started right after I got out of the army. Figured I'd spent enough time in deserts. Time to work around water for a while." "You were in the army?" 2 tours in Afghanistan." He looked up from his testing kit. "But that's ancient history. Much rather talk about beautiful pools and even more beautiful pool owners." I laughed, a genuine laugh that felt rusty from disuse. "You're quite the charmer, aren't you?" "Just honest." His eyes met mine and held them for a moment longer than necessary. We chatted for another 10 minutes while he worked. He told me about growing up in California, his plans to expand his business, his love of surfing. I found myself sharing things too, how I'd always wanted to travel, my dreams of learning to paint, the novel I'd started writing but never finished. "You should finish it," he said as he packed up his equipment. "Life's too short not to chase your dreams." After he left, I sat by the pool for a long time, thinking about our conversation. Dylan had listened to me, really listened. He'd asked follow-up questions and seemed genuinely interested in my answers. When was the last time Graham had done that? That evening, Graham came home with the same tired expression he'd worn for months. "How was your day?" I asked, hoping for more than his usual one-word response. "Fine." He loosened his tie and headed for his office. The pool guy came by today. He's a veteran, served in Afghanistan. Graham was already pulling files from his briefcase. I was thinking maybe we could plan a vacation this summer. Somewhere with a beach. Chloe would love it, and we could all use some time away. Maybe. Let me see how the Morrison audit goes. It was always the Morrison audit, or the Henderson account, or the quarterly reports. There was always something more important than us. That night, as I lay in bed listening to Graham's steady breathing, I thought about Dylan's words. Life's too short not to chase your dreams. What were my dreams anymore? When had I stopped having any? My phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. A text from Dylan. Thanks for the water today. Hope you have a wonderful evening. I stared at that message for a long time before responding. Thank you for the lovely conversation. It was the highlight of my day. I sent it before I could second-guess myself, then quickly deleted the thread again. But as I drifted off to sleep, I was smiling for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Chloe was unusually quiet at breakfast. What's wrong, sweetheart? I asked, sitting beside her. Why was Daddy so sad at dinner last night? My heart clenched. What makes you think Daddy was sad? He had his sad face on, the same one he has when he thinks I'm not looking. Out of the mouths of babes, our 6-year-old daughter was more perceptive than I'd given her credit for. She was seeing what I'd been trying to ignore, that something was seriously wrong with our family. Daddy's just stressed about work, I said, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. But as I watched Chloe push her cereal around her bowl, I realized that our problems were affecting her too. And instead of that motivating me to fix things with Graham, I found myself thinking about Dylan's smile and how good it had felt to be seen, really seen, by someone. The next few weeks fell into a dangerous pattern. Dylan came by twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, and I found myself looking forward to his visits with an anticipation that should have alarmed me. Each time, our conversations grew longer and more personal. He told me about his struggles adjusting to civilian life, his dreams of opening a surf shop someday. I shared my frustrations about feeling stuck, about missing the person I used to be before marriage, and motherhood consumed my identity. You're too young to give up on yourself, he said one Tuesday morning as he skimmed leaves from our pool. 32 is nothing. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, I admitted. I love Chloe more than anything, but I feel like I lost myself somewhere along the way. Maybe it's time to find her again. Graham, meanwhile, seemed to retreat further into his work. He left earlier each morning and came home later each evening. When he was home, he was either buried in his laptop or too exhausted to engage in meaningful conversation. The Morrison audit is expanding, he explained one night when I asked why he'd missed Chloe's soccer game. They found irregularities that require a full forensic review. Can't someone else handle it? I'm the senior auditor on the account. It's my responsibility. Always his responsibility, never his choice. I was beginning to understand that Graham had built a prison of obligations around himself, and somehow I'd gotten locked inside with him. The first real line was crossed on a Friday morning in late spring. Dylan arrived for his regular service call, but this time he lingered after finishing his work. I don't suppose you'd want to grab coffee sometime, he asked, coiling his pool vacuum hose with deliberate casualness. My heart hammered against my ribs. I don't think that would be appropriate. Just coffee, he said with that disarming smile. Two friends talking. Nothing wrong with that, is there? He was right, wasn't he? There was nothing wrong with having a friend, especially when my husband seemed to have forgotten I existed. I suppose coffee wouldn't hurt, I heard myself say. We met that afternoon at Brewster's Cafe on Main Street, a cozy little place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. I told myself I was just being friendly, that this was perfectly innocent. Dylan was waiting at a corner table when I arrived, and his face lit up when he saw me. You came, he said, standing to pull out my chair. I said I would. I wasn't sure. Thought you might change your mind. I should have. I should have turned around and walked out right then. Instead, I sat down and let him buy me a latte. We talked for 2 hours, about everything and nothing. He asked about my dreams, my fears, my favorite books and movies. He listened to my answers like they mattered, like I mattered. Your husband's a lucky man, he said as we prepared to leave. I don't think he'd agree with you. Then he's a fool. The way he said it, with such quiet conviction, made my breath catch. Walking to our cars, Dylan suddenly stopped. Seraphina, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you happy? The question hung in the air between us. I wanted to say yes, of course I was happy. I had a good life, a stable marriage, a beautiful daughter. But the word wouldn't come. I don't know, I whispered. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne. You deserve to be happy. That night, I deleted our text messages and tried to pretend the coffee date hadn't happened. But when Graham came home at 9 o'clock, barely acknowledging me before disappearing into his office, I felt the resentment building in my chest like a physical weight. The next Tuesday, Dylan's text came with a new addition. Morning, Seraphina. I'll be by around 10 as usual. Hope you're having a beautiful day. P.S. Thanks for the coffee. Best part of my week. I stared at that message for 10 minutes before responding. Looking forward to seeing you. Coffee was lovely. This time, I didn't delete the thread. When Dylan arrived, he seemed more relaxed, more familiar. We'd crossed some invisible boundary, and we both knew it. How's the novel coming? He asked as he tested the pool chemicals. I haven't worked on it in weeks. Why not? I don't know. No time, I guess. Or no encouragement. He was right. Graham had never asked about my writing, had never shown any interest in my creative pursuits at all. Maybe you need a change of scenery, Dylan suggested. Sometimes a new environment can spark creativity. Like where? I know this great spot by the lake. Quiet, peaceful, perfect for writing. I could show you sometime if you'd like. Another line, waiting to be crossed. That sounds nice, I said, and immediately felt guilty for how nice it sounded. We made plans to meet at the lake the following Saturday. Graham would be at the office. He worked most Saturdays now, and Chloe would be at her friend Emma's birthday party. I spent the week alternating between excitement and guilt. What was I doing? I was a married woman, a mother. I shouldn't be making secret plans with another man, no matter how innocent they seemed. But then Graham would come home exhausted and distracted, barely speaking to me over dinner, and I'd remember how Dylan made me feel seen and appreciated and alive. Saturday morning arrived grey and drizzly. I almost cancelled, but then Graham announced he'd be working late again. On a Saturday, I asked. The Morrison audit won't complete itself, he said, not looking up from his coffee. I'll probably be there until 8 or 9. What about family time? What about us? This is for us, Seraphina. This promotion will mean better benefits, more security for Chloe's future. Always about the future. Never about the present, never about now. I dropped Chloe at Emma's party and drove to the lake with my laptop and a thermos of coffee. Dylan was already there, sitting on a picnic table overlooking the water. I wasn't sure you'd come, he said, echoing his words from the cafe. I almost didn't. But you did. His smile was warm, approving. I'm glad. We found a quiet spot under a large oak tree. I opened my laptop and tried to write, while Dylan read a paperback thriller he'd brought. But I found myself stealing glances at him instead of focusing on my story. Having trouble concentrating, he asked, catching me looking. A little. Want to talk about what's on your mind? So I did. I told him about feeling trapped in my marriage, about Graham's emotional absence, about my fears that I was disappearing into the roles of wife and mother. You're not disappearing, Dylan said softly. You're right here. I can see you. The way he looked at me when he said it made my pulse race. Dylan, I know, he said. This is complicated, but life is complicated. Doesn't mean we can't enjoy each other's company. He was right. We weren't doing anything wrong. We were just talking, just being friends. There was nothing wrong with friendship. That's what I told myself when he walked me to my car and hugged me goodbye. Just a friendly hug, nothing more. But that night, as I lay in bed beside Graham's sleeping form, I couldn't stop thinking about how good it had felt to be held, even briefly, by someone who wanted to hold me. The texting started innocently enough. Good morning messages, funny memes, pictures of beautiful sunsets. Dylan had a way of making ordinary moments feel special just by sharing them with me. Saw this flower and thought of you, he texted one morning, along with a photo of a wild rose growing beside a fence. It's beautiful, I replied, like someone else I know. I should have shut it down then. Should have told him that kind of message was inappropriate. Instead, I felt a thrill of excitement that I hadn't experienced in years. The messages became more frequent, more personal. He'd text me during his lunch breaks, asking about my day, sharing stories from his other clients. I found myself checking my phone constantly, disappointed when there were no new messages from him. Graham noticed my phone habits before I realized how obvious they'd become. You're on that thing a lot lately, he observed one evening, as I quickly closed a text thread. Just work stuff, I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. Since when does the clinic text you after hours? Dr. Peterson's been having me coordinate with the new insurance companies. Lots of back and forth. The lie came so easily it scared me. When had I become someone who lied to her husband? But Graham just nodded and went back to his laptop. He didn't press for details, didn't seem particularly interested in my work life. His acceptance of my explanation felt like permission to continue. The photo request came on a Wednesday morning in June. I was getting ready for work when Dylan's text arrived. Hope you're having a great morning. Wish I could see your beautiful smile to start my day right. The kiss emoji was new, an escalation that made my stomach flutter with nervous excitement. I found myself standing in front of my bedroom mirror, holding up my phone. Just a selfie, I told myself. Friends send selfies all the time. I took several shots before settling on one, where my smile looked natural and my hair caught the morning light just right. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. His response was immediate. Wow, you just made my whole day. You're absolutely gorgeous. I felt beautiful for the first time in months. When was the last time Graham had called me gorgeous? When was the last time he'd really looked at me long enough to have an opinion about my appearance? The selfies became a regular thing. Nothing inappropriate, just face shots, usually in the morning before work. Dylan's responses were always enthusiastic, always complimentary. He made me feel attractive and desirable in a way I'd almost forgotten was possible. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a Friday afternoon and I was home alone. Chloe was at a sleepover. Graham was working late again. The house felt empty and quiet, and I found myself missing the sound of Dylan's voice. On impulse, I decided to take a swim. The water was perfect, warm from the afternoon sun. I floated on my back, looking up at the cloudless sky, feeling more relaxed than I had in weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. Hope you're enjoying this beautiful day. What are you up to? Just taking a swim, I replied. Lucky you, I'm stuck cleaning the Hendersons' pool. Their filter system is ancient. Poor you, I typed back, then added, wish you were here instead. The response came quickly. Me too. I bet you look amazing in that pool. I looked down at myself in my navy blue one-piece swimsuit. I did look good, I realized. The sun had given me a light tan, and the water made my skin glow. Before I could talk myself out of it, I climbed out of the pool and positioned my phone on one of the patio chairs. The selfie timer gave me 10 seconds to pose by the pool's edge, water droplets still glistening on my skin. I sent the photo with the message, wish you were here to enjoy this beautiful day. Dylan's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Holy wow, you're absolutely stunning. That's the most beautiful thing I've seen all day. All week, actually. The compliment sent a rush of excitement through me. I felt powerful, desirable, alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. That's when I heard the front door close. Graham was home early. I quickly deleted the photo and message thread, my heart pounding. I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around myself just as Graham appeared on the patio. "You're home early," I said, hoping my voice sounded normal. "Finished the Henderson review sooner than expected." He looked at me oddly. "You seem flustered." "Just surprised to see you. I wasn't expecting you for another hour." Graham nodded, but his eyes were studying my face with an intensity that made me nervous. That night, as I was doing laundry, Graham appeared in the laundry room doorway. "Where's your navy swimsuit?" he asked. My blood turned to ice. "What?" "Your navy one-piece. The one you were wearing earlier. It's not in the hamper." I rinsed it out and hung it up to dry. "It's on the shower rod in our bathroom." But even as I said it, I knew he'd check. And when he did, he'd find the shower rod empty because I'd been so flustered by his early arrival that I'd forgotten to actually put the swimsuit anywhere. Graham disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later, he came back down, his expression unreadable. "It's not there," he said quietly. "It must have fallen. Check the hamper in our closet." Another lie. Another moment where I chose deception over honesty. Graham found the swimsuit eventually. I'd thrown it in the back of my closet in my panic. But I could see the suspicion in his eyes, the way he was starting to put pieces together. That night, as we lay in bed, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Seraphina, is there something you want to tell me?" This was my chance. I could have confessed everything: the coffee dates, the texting, the photos. I could have told him how lonely and neglected I'd been feeling, how desperate I was for his attention and affection. Instead, I chose the path that would ultimately destroy everything. "I don't know what you mean," I said. "You've been different lately, distant, secretive." "I think you're imagining things, Graham. You've been so stressed about work, maybe it's affecting how you see everything else." "Maybe," he said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. As he drifted off to sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my phone burning like a guilty secret on the nightstand beside me. I should delete Dylan's number, should end this before it went any further. Instead, I found myself thinking about his reaction to my poolside photo, about how alive and desirable he made me feel. Just as I was finally falling asleep, my phone buzzed softly with a new message from Dylan. "Can't stop thinking about that beautiful photo. You're incredible, Seraphina. Sweet dreams." I smiled in the darkness and drifted off to sleep, completely unaware that Graham was lying awake beside me, having seen the phone screen light up with the incoming message. The next morning, over breakfast, 6-year-old Chloe asked the question that would haunt me for months to come. "Mummy, why did Daddy look so sad when he was making coffee this morning?" I glanced at Graham, who was methodically buttering his toast with the same mechanical precision he brought to everything else. But Chloe was right. There was something different about his expression, something that looked suspiciously like heartbreak. "Daddy's just tired, sweetheart," I said, but even as the words left my mouth, I knew they weren't true. The confrontation Graham looked up and met my eyes across the breakfast table. In that moment, I saw something chilling. He knew. Maybe not all the details, but he knew something was wrong. And instead of feeling guilty or sorry, I felt angry. Angry that he was suspicious. Angry that he was watching me. Angry that he was finally paying attention for all the wrong reasons. "I'm going to be late," I said, standing abruptly. "Chloe, finish your cereal." As I grabbed my purse, Graham's voice stopped me, quiet and sad. "Seraphina." I turned, hand on the doorknob. "We need to talk, soon." "About what?" "You know what." But I wasn't ready for that conversation. "I really don't know what you mean, Graham, but I'm late for work." I walked out, leaving my husband and daughter at the breakfast table, my phone buzzing with messages from Dylan. I had no idea Graham was already making plans of his own. The atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Graham watched me with an auditor's careful attention. I became more secretive, more defensive. My co-workers noticed my distraction. Dr. Peterson repeated instructions twice. I made scheduling errors requiring embarrassing phone calls. "Everything okay, Seraphina?" Janet asked after I double-booked an appointment. "Fine, just tired." But her knowing look suggested she wasn't buying it. My relationship with Dylan had evolved beyond innocent friendship. Our texts became flirtatious, then romantic, then something that made my pulse race. "Good morning, beautiful," became his standard greeting. "Thinking about you" became mine. "You're wasted on someone who doesn't appreciate you," he said during a call. "It's not that simple. Life's short. You can't spend it waiting for someone to notice you exist." The validation was intoxicating. After months of invisibility, Dylan's attention was like sunlight after a long winter. During one coffee date, Dylan reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm falling for you." I should have pulled away, reminded him I was married. Instead, I squeezed his fingers. "I'm falling for you, too." "What are we going to do about it?" "I don't know." "You could leave him." I found myself considering it. What did I have with Graham anymore? A routine, a shared mortgage, a daughter asking why Daddy seemed so sad. It's complicated. It doesn't have to be. At home, Graham's behavior shifted to coldly analytical. He asked pointed questions about my schedule, whereabouts, sudden interest in working late. "Where did you go for lunch today?" "The usual place. Why?" "Just curious. You seem to be eating out a lot lately." "The clinic's been busy. It's easier than packing lunch." Another lie. They came so easily now I barely noticed. Graham nodded, making a note in his phone. Was he keeping track? Building a case? The paranoia affected my sleep. I'd lie awake, hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. Sometimes I'd catch Graham looking at me with hurt, disappointment, something like grief. During the day, I checked my phone obsessively, living for Dylan's messages. He sent photos, sunrise shots, flowers, selfies saying, "Wish you were here." I reciprocated with carefully cropped photos. Nothing inappropriate, I told myself. Just coffee, lunch, my face in afternoon sunlight. "You're so beautiful," he'd text. "I can't stop thinking about you." The compliments fed something hungry inside me, something starving for attention. Then came the evening that changed everything. I was preparing dinner when Graham walked in carrying a manila folder. "We need to talk," he said, setting it on the counter. "Can it wait? I'm trying to get dinner ready before Chloe gets home from soccer." "No, it can't wait." His face was pale but determined, like someone who'd made a difficult decision. "What's in the folder, Graham?" "Bank statements." My blood turned to ice. "What about them?" "There are charges I don't recognize. Coffee shops in Millbrook and Riverside, restaurants we've never been to, gas purchases that don't match your routes." He spread statements across the counter like evidence. "This charge, Brewster's Cafe, $15, not your usual coffee place." I was running errands. I needed caffeine. "What errands?" "Grocery shopping, maybe." "The grocery store there is more expensive than our usual one. Why drive 20 minutes out of your way to pay more?" He was right, but I couldn't tell him the truth, that I'd been meeting Dylan at cafes across 3 towns. I don't appreciate being interrogated like a criminal. "Since when do you monitor every penny I spend?" "Since my wife started acting like a stranger." The word wife hit me like a slap. When had Graham started referring to me in third person? "I'm not acting like anything. You're being paranoid." "Am I?" He pulled out his phone. "Then explain this." A screenshot of our cell phone bill, my number highlighted, data usage triple normal, dozens of calls to Dylan's number. "Who is this number, Seraphina?" "I don't know, wrong numbers." 47 calls last month, some over an hour. That's a very persistent wrong number." I could see the trap closing. Maybe robocallers. Graham stared at me. Something died in his eyes. You're lying to me. I'm not. You're lying and we both know it. Why won't you tell me the truth? Because the truth would destroy everything. There's nothing to tell. Graham picked up his phone. I'm calling this number. No. Why not? If it's robocallers, there's no harm, right? He dialed. Put it on speaker. Hello? Dylan's voice filled our kitchen. This is Graham Quail. I believe you've been calling my wife's number. Pause. Oh, hi. Yeah, I'm Dylan. I service your pool. And you need to call my wife 47 times a month about pool service? We've been discussing upgrades, new filter, maybe a heater, ongoing. Interesting, because I handle household finances, and I haven't seen any estimates. We're still in preliminary stages. For over an hour at a time? Silence. I think you and my wife have been discussing more than pool maintenance. Look, Mr. Quail. Graham hung up. So, the pool guy. I couldn't speak. How long? Graham. How long, Seraphina? It's not what you think. What I think is my wife has been having an affair with the pool maintenance man. Am I wrong? We haven't. We're not. It's just talking. Just friendship. Friends don't lie about 47 phone calls. Friends don't sneak around meeting at cafes in other towns. He knew about the cafes. You've been following me. I've been trying to understand why my wife became a stranger. The front door opened. I'm home. Chloe's voice. Graham and I looked at each other across the counter, bank statements and phone bills spread between us like wreckage. We'll finish this later. But I realized there was nothing left to finish. Graham knew the truth. The life we'd built was over, and it was my fault. That night, Graham came to our bedroom. I want you to end it. Graham, whatever this is with the pool guy, I want it ended. Tonight. It's not an affair. We're just friends. Friends don't destroy marriages. You're overreacting. Graham stared at me, then nodded slowly. Okay, if that's how you want to play this. He walked toward the door. Where are you going? To the guest room. I can't sleep next to someone who thinks so little of me that she won't admit the truth when caught red-handed. The next morning, a note on the counter. I've cancelled our account with Sunshine Pool Service. Find a new company. I've also changed the Wi-Fi password and added parental controls to your phone plan. If you want to continue your friendship with Dylan, you'll do it on your own time and dime. Graham. Fury built in my chest. How dare he control who I could talk to? I called Dylan, voicemail. Text wouldn't send. Graham had blocked his number. At work, I used the clinic phone. Sunshine Pool Service, Dylan speaking. It's me. Seraphina? Jesus, your husband called my boss. I could lose my job over this. I'm sorry. What did you tell him? Nothing. I tried to explain we're just friends, but he didn't believe me. Maybe because it's not true anymore. The admission hung between us. I care about you, a lot. But I can't afford to lose my business. I've got bills. So what are you saying? Maybe we need to cool things down, let the heat die down. You're abandoning me. I'm being practical. He didn't call later, or the next day, or the day after. I was truly alone, caught between a husband who no longer trusted me and a man who'd disappeared at the first sign of conflict. The fallout spread through our social circle like wildfire. Within a week, everyone knew about my friendship with Dylan. Graham's mother called, ice in her voice. Derek heard from his wife, who heard at the grocery store. That my wife has been carrying on with the pool boy like some desperate housewife cliché. That's not fair. Isn't it? My sister Joanna called. Mum told me what's going on. Nothing's going on. Sarah, come on, you can tell me the truth. Instead of admitting it, I said, Graham's being paranoid. He's neglecting our marriage and blaming me for being lonely. I was making myself the victim. The breaking point came at Derek and Susan's barbecue. Conversation stopped when I arrived. Marilyn looked at me with open disapproval. I overheard Susan's friends. I heard it's been going on for months. The poor man. With a little girl in the house. How selfish. In the kitchen, Derek found me. Whatever you've heard. I've heard enough. You betrayed your husband and humiliated your family. You don't understand what our marriage has been like. I understand Graham loves you, works overtime for Chloe's college fund, to pay off the mortgage early. He's been carrying the weight while you sought attention elsewhere. Each word hit like a blow. I never meant for this to happen. But it did. And now my niece is asking why everyone seems mad at Mommy. I started crying. Derek didn't comfort me. You need to decide what you want. This limbo is destroying everyone. I want my family back. Then start acting like it. I found Graham by the pool. I want to go home. He handed me his keys. Take my car. Chloe and I will get a ride with Derek. Can we talk? Not here. Not now. Then when? I don't know, Seraphina. I honestly don't know. I drove home alone, leaving my husband and daughter where I was no longer welcome. That night, I lay in our bed, now just my bed, trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. 3 months ago, I'd been living a quiet suburban life. Now I was the subject of gossip, estranged from my husband, cut off from his family, abandoned by Dylan. For the first time, I was completely alone with the truth of what I'd done. And the truth was ugly. I'd destroyed my marriage not because Graham was a bad husband, but because I was selfish and insecure. I'd lied to protect myself from consequences. I'd chosen easy validation over the harder work of communicating with my husband. But even acknowledging these truths, I wasn't ready to act on them. Wasn't ready to humble myself, to admit I was the villain. So I did what I'd been doing for months, told myself everyone was overreacting, that somehow everything would work itself out. I had no idea Graham was already 3 steps ahead, consulting lawyers and documenting my lies with methodical precision. I had no idea my choices were about to catch up with me, and I had no idea the biggest shock was still coming. 2 weeks after the disastrous barbecue, I missed my period. Stress could cause irregularities. Graham was sleeping in the guest room, speaking only when necessary. Even 6-year-old Chloe was asking if we were getting divorced. But when nausea started, followed by crushing exhaustion, I began to suspect what I desperately didn't want to face. I bought the test at a pharmacy 3 towns over. That evening, with Graham working late and Chloe at a sleepover, I finally took it. 2 pink lines appeared immediately. The timeline was a nightmare. Graham and I had barely touched each other in months. But 3 weeks ago, Dylan and I had finally crossed the line. It had happened so naturally. We'd been talking about my loneliness, how Graham never saw me anymore. "You're beautiful," Dylan had said. "You deserve to be loved." And then he'd kissed me, and for the first time in years, I'd felt desired and alive. We'd only been together once, but once was enough. Now, staring at the test, I felt my world tilt. Whose baby was I carrying? I tried calling Dylan, voicemail. I left a message saying it was urgent. Hours passed with no response. That night, I calculated dates and probabilities, trying to convince myself the baby had to be Graham's. We'd been intimate once in 2 months, about a week before Dylan. The timing was close enough for reasonable doubt, but reasonable doubt wasn't certainty. Dr. Martinez confirmed it the following week, 6 weeks pregnant. "Congratulations. Have you told your husband?" "Not yet. I wanted to be sure first." That evening, Dylan finally called back. "What's so urgent?" "I need to see you." "Seraphina, I told you we need to cool things down. I'm pregnant." Long silence. "Are you sure?" "I saw a doctor today, 6 weeks along." "And you think it's—" "I don't know. It could be Graham's. The timing is close." "What do you want to do?" "I don't know, but I wanted you to know. This complicates everything." "It doesn't have to. If it's Graham's, and if it's not, I'm 28, barely getting my business off the ground. I'm not ready to be anyone's father. I'm not asking you to be ready. I think this is a sign we need to step back. You're abandoning me. You're married, you're pregnant, your husband suspects. The best thing is if I fade out. What if the baby is yours? We'll deal with that when we know for sure. Until then, no contact. He hung up. I told Graham on Friday evening. I'm pregnant. Surprise, confusion, maybe hope crossed his face. About 6 weeks, he calculated. That would be early May. We were intimate that week. Once. I saw doubt creep in. Are you happy about this? I don't know. Given everything between us. This could be a fresh start, Graham. Could it? Or just another complication? Over weeks, his behavior softened slightly. He slept in our bed again, though we didn't touch. But I felt him watching, studying, looking for deception. At 8 weeks, I heard the heartbeat alone. When can we determine paternity? I asked Dr. Martinez. She looked concerned. Is there a question about paternity? No, just for medical history. Non-invasive testing as early as 9 weeks requires blood from the potential father. Or fathers, I thought. That evening, Graham was making tea. How was your appointment? Good. Everything looks normal. I've been thinking, about us, the baby. I think we should see a marriage counselor. Hope flickered. Okay. And I think we should get a paternity test. The cup slipped from my hands, shattering. Why? Because I need to know if this baby is mine or his. The baby is yours, Graham. Then you won't mind proving it. Fine. We'll get the test. But I knew it was over. The fact that he'd demanded proof meant our marriage was already dead. The envelope arrived Tuesday morning. Mitchell and Associates, attorneys at law. Inside, petition for legal separation and temporary restraining order. Immediate separation, temporary custody of Chloe, exclusive use of our home. Restraining order, preventing contact with Dylan. The attached evidence devastated me. Bank statements, phone records, photos from a private investigator. Pictures I'd sent Dylan. Us at the lake, kissing. Jennifer Mitchell called. You have 48 hours to vacate the marital home. Where am I supposed to go? That's not our concern. I tried Dylan. I need help. Graham's throwing me out. I'm sorry, but I'm seeing someone else now. Someone without complications. What about everything you said? This got out of hand. You should have thought about consequences. He hung up. My sister couldn't help. No one could. That evening, Graham waited with Chloe. Daddy says you're going on a trip. After Chloe went to bed, Graham showed me more evidence. The photos, the timeline. So it wasn't just emotional. You slept with him. Once. It only happened once. Once was enough. I never meant for this to happen. But it did. Now we deal with consequences. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. The next morning, I packed 2 suitcases, said goodbye to Chloe. When are you coming back, Mummy? I don't know, sweetheart. I drove to the Sunset Motel, a rundown place that rented by the week. The room smelled like cigarettes and disinfectant. Dylan texted, I heard about the separation. Best if we don't have contact. What about the baby? What if it's yours? I can't help you. I have to think about my own future now. He was gone completely. Alone in my motel room, I finally faced the truth. I'd destroyed my marriage not because Graham was bad, but because I was selfish. I'd chosen excitement over stability. Outside, I could see the lights of my former neighborhood. Graham was probably tucking Chloe in, being the parent she needed. And I was here, alone with regrets and a baby whose paternity would forever be a question. Graham had been 3 steps ahead the entire time, collecting evidence while I pretended everything could go back to normal. In the end, it wasn't passion or love that destroyed my marriage. It was simple accounting. Graham had calculated the cost of my betrayal and determined I was a liability he could no longer afford. This was rock bottom. I'd lost everything: husband, home, daughter, dignity, for attention from a man who'd abandoned me at the first sign of trouble. The worst part was knowing I had no one to blame but myself.